Uh, Thank you all. All right, so first and foremost, welcome. Thanks for being here. I know everybody's got a lot going on, so thanks for taking the time out of your Friday afternoon to hear some updates about what's going on in South Carolina. Just an agenda for today. I'm going to do a brief introduction, kind of already did that. And then we're going to have Ian present to us from EAB, and then we'll go into some of our committee updates and any state updates. And then if we have time, we'll do a quick breakout discussion and wrap up. So this is me. Hi, glad to be here again. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ian Watt, who's here with us today from EAB. He's the Executive Director for Enrollment Strategy. And so, Ian, I'm going to stop sharing, and you should be able to share your screen, and you can take it away.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to join you. I will. So for those of you, I imagine most of you are familiar in some way with EAB from sort of, we work in a various number of places. We work with K through 12 institutions. We work with school boards. We obviously also work with colleges and universities. We work with schools on institutional strategy, as well as syndicated research, student success, enrollment success, and advancement. So a lot of different places. Today, though, and my world is specifically in traditional enrollment. And so my role is Executive Director for Enrollment Strategy. So I help colleges and universities with their enrollment strategy. Today's task is kind of tough for me because I think some of you come from the high school side, some of you come from the college side. And so my task here is, how can I make this interesting and relevant for both sides of the equation? So what I'm going to propose is this. I'm going to be sharing, most of the things I'm going to be sharing are from the lens of how a college would view it, because that's the world that I live in. But what I would ask for those of you on the high school side is to kind of check this, right? Like actually that's different than what my students are saying, or I see a different experience or otherwise. So I hope that with that lens, we can all find value in this. I think that you have the slides, but if you don't, I will make sure you have them afterwards in case you want to, I don't know, share them with friends and family and things. So let me start here. And the other kind of challenge that I have is I could do this for like 4 hours. And so the challenge is, how do we distill this down to the things that are most relevant and most pertinent? So I've tried to do that. And with this slide, I'm actually trying to take care of like losing like 17 graphs and charts and just sort of summarizing it in this way. So we have been doing survey research since 2002. And with that in mind, we have a panel of each year about 100,000 high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors and their parents. And we ask them all sorts of questions. What do you like? What don't you like? How do you think about schools? What's most important in enrollment decision? Things like that. And most of the information that we collect and then that we share out in the form of share out in surveys is in the form of like charts and graphs. But we also collect qualitative response. So we allow parents and students to just free respond to questions. So what I did is I went back to all of our qualitative data, all of our free response data going back to 2002. And these are my words, not any one particular student or parent's words, but this is me summarizing what I read and sort of the prevailing kind of forces and the prevailing trends that were on people's minds. Obviously, individual students and families differed, but generally on value, it was like, yeah, I'm going to go to the best school I can get into, however I might consider best. Debt perception was sort of like, yeah, whatever, loans are fine. They extend my options. I can open up a bunch more opportunities there. And then when outcomes, it was like, yeah, whatever. College is a great opportunity to explore and learn. You've got a bunch of different majors and I'll figure it out and it'll be great. So those are the good old days. Where we are now is I'm no longer gonna go to the best school that I can get into. I'm gonna go to the best school that my family can afford. And again, however that might be defined. On debt perception, it's, yeah, if I have to pay it back, it doesn't count. So redo my package, there must be some sort of an error here. And then I think the biggest changes on outcomes, it's instead of like, I'm going to learn and explore, it'll be great. It's like, I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions about your majors. And I need to know what job will I get for each major? How much will I get paid in that job? And if I graduate on a Saturday, where will I be on Monday? And if you can answer all those questions to my satisfaction, I might inquire. And that's kind of the world that we used to be in versus the world that we're in now. And I would sort of this distinction of the good old days versus today, around 2008 is where things really started to change. And that's sort of coming out of the financial crisis. COVID threw fuel on that fire. And then that's sort of where we are today. So again, this sort of takes care of like what I could otherwise describe with like 17 charts and graphs. Speaking of charts and graphs, though, one thing that, and on the college side, one thing that schools will often look at, and I don't necessarily think that enrollment offices necessarily obsess over this. It tends more to be stakeholders like board members and cabinet members and other folks who are like, oh, what's your yield rate? And they will use yield rate because it's sort of an easy proxy to then say, oh, our yield rate means how much people like us. And so if our yield rate goes up, it must mean that people like us more than last year. And if our yield rate goes down, it must mean that people like us less or that people aren't working as hard. Where in reality, yield rate does none of those things. Yield rate is simply, it's just the math. Like, and given that we've got basically the same number of schools and basically the same number of students, if not fewer, but each of those students is submitting more applications per student, mathematically, yield can only go in one direction. So I calculated national average yield rate for public schools and private schools going back to 2009. Could have gone back further and it'd be the exact same trend. And that is that every single year, yield rate has declined. And it's not because people are being less polite, people aren't working as hard. It is just simply the math behind it. So from like on the college side, this is the uphill battle that you're waging. This is sort of the gravitational force. It's not to say that an individual school can't increase their yield rate per se. It's just that this is the ever-present gravitational force that we're working against. Another force that is I think, I don't want to say new, but it is definitely becoming more prevalent is the notion of students actively and intentionally deciding not to go to college. Now, in none of our worlds is it our job to make every single student go to college. There are some students for whom a four-year school is genuinely not the best fit for them, and it's not going to make the most sense. But what is interesting is if we look at these trends over time, there is a significant increase in the number of students that are deciding not to go to college. And oftentimes when folks reflect on this trend of more students not going to college, their first thought may be, oh yeah, that must be first-generation students or lower income students. And yes, that is the largest population of students that may not attend college, but the biggest increase in pacing is among families that are among higher wage earners. You can see here this 100,000 plus. And so it's often tempting to be like, oh yeah, these must be like gap years and they're spending the year in Europe or whatever. Maybe that's the case for a family that's making 300,000 or more. But for a family in these middle reaches, that is not a family that can afford to support their kid if they're not actively working. And so what you end up with is students actively and intentionally deciding not to go to college. And even if it's only for 1 year, it's really hard to get back on the train once life happens and things intervene. And the thing about this trend is that, you know, where it comes from, it's social, political, economic, and you could have like 300 economists line up and say, go to college, you'll make more money, you'll live longer, you'll be healthier, you're more likely to own a home, all these good things. And then you get one joker on TikTok who's like, don't go to college. And then students are like, oh, I'm not going to go to college because this person said that it's okay. And so that's kind of what we're contending with. For colleges, oftentimes the notion is like, well, we can fight this, we can defeat this, we just need the right message and we just need to all band together. The challenge is that for most of these students, it's not like these are students that are walking up to a college fair table and saying, I'm thinking about not going to college, convince me otherwise. These students aren't even coming up to the table. They're deciding before we even have a chance to talk to them and sort of and opting out in that way. So this is sort of further constricting the population from which we can recruit. By the way, I'll just kind of keep rolling unless you stop me. So like, feel free, like Catherine, I might ask you to kind of MC because I can see you. I can't see everybody. Just kind of yell at me if there's questions or comments or if anyone raises a hand or otherwise. So with that in mind, so this trend of like of college going rates, this chart is national. I'm going to make this real by bringing this down to South Carolina. And one of the other trends that I think that we all hear about is this notion of like demographic apocalypse and doom and gloom and demographic cliff and all that stuff. Well, here's the thing. South Carolina, that is not your problem. Your demographics have been and continue to be actually quite positive. Your challenge is something different. So what you're looking at here, there's a whole bunch of numbers and stuff going on in this graph, but I'll break it down. So the bars here represent college going rates for the state of South Carolina. So of the students that graduate from high school, what percentage of them go on to college? The solid gray bars are what has already happened, and the shaded gray lines is what is projected for the future. The black line is headcount. That is the number of high school graduates. Again, solid has already happened, dotted is projected. The blue line is what's important, though. The blue line is essentially the product of the two. So of the students that graduate high school, what proportion of them go on to college? And that leaves us with our blue line. So essentially what you can see is that even though over the course of the past several years, you actually had more high school graduates, because fewer of them decided to go to college, we end up with an actual decreasing pace in the number of college enrollment. When we think about what that means moving forward, we actually have, you can see a nice increase in projected high school graduates for state of South Carolina. The problem is this projected continued pace of decreasing college going rates. And what we're left with is essentially what could have been growth is simply stability. Now, for what it's worth, in today's world, stability is pretty darn good. I could show you Illinois, and it is bonkers, where you have this projected 1,000 more first-time enrolls by the year 2035. Illinois has a projected 40,000 student decrease in the same time period. So, you are at least sort of in a position of relative stability in terms of the market from which you can draw, except for the fact that all the states around you, and even ones that aren't around you, have access to the same data. And as a result, they're coming to get your students. And so this sort of only increases the competition. Another challenge, and I'll begin by saying this challenge is more significant for small colleges than it is for larger institutions. And I'm beginning this with this sensational and ridiculous headline this was in 2002, but this sort of started the cottage industry of spectating as colleges close. And so this sensational headline of like 861 colleges closed and 9,000 campuses since 24. Oh my gosh, like it's crazy. So the reality behind this, I sort of have broken this apart. And there's a point to all of this that I think is an important one. So first of all, of these 861 colleges, 549 of them were vocational and trade schools. Not to minimize the fact that those schools closed, but when you use the word colleges in the American lexicon, that typically means four-year schools. So 549 are vocational and trade schools. 169 of them were two-year institutions. Again, not to minimize their closure or the impact that had on students and real people. And then 88 of them were for-profit institutions. That leaves us with 55. So since 2000, since in this case, this data set, going back to 2008, 55 four-year nonprofit institutions have closed. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal for those schools. But I mean, in terms, if we look at this, like, I hate to use this word, but if we look at this as an industry, it's 3%, and that's kind of well within the range of what happens in normal industries as supply matches demand. Now, let's break this apart and sort of understand what are the characteristics of some of these schools that have closed. First of all, if we look at it by region, the vast majority of them are in the Midwest and the Northeast, and this is simply. And speaking of small schools, the average total enrollment at the time of closure was 981. So to put that in perspective, that covers both undergraduate and graduate. To have a total enrollment of 981, in general, the average first-year class is under 300 students. So that's sort of the size of a school that sort of becomes at risk. But here's the point, especially for those of you on the line that are at small private colleges, is that for most schools in general, most small private colleges, the risk of closure itself is actually not the biggest risk. It is the fact that journalists and parents and students don't have the ability to tell the difference between what is a happy and healthy and thriving small private college versus what is a small private college that is really at risk. And as a result, you sort of have this dark cloud that hangs over anyone that happens to look like a small private college. I'm looking at you, Catherine, like University of South Carolina this is not, you have many problems and challenges. This is not one of them. But for those of you at smaller schools, the lingering issue here, whether it's asked of you or not, is the fact that parents and students don't have the ability to distinguish, nor should they. And the cottage industry that has emerged is this constant stream of articles that goes something like, this week, ABC school closed. Last week, XYZ school closed. Who's next? Dun, dun, dun. And that is I believe, a significant challenge, and one that we don't need that, but it's a reality. Okay, I'm going to pause here because I've just sort of talked about like some of the, like, if I were sort of distill it down, these are, I think, the biggest trends that are sort of shaping things among others. I'll pause here in case anyone has questions, comments, corrections, or a different view. And then I'm going to go into sort of looking at what does this mean in terms of actual numbers. But any comments, questions, corrections?
Ian, I have a quick question. So looking at this slide and the closures since 2008, how much of that activity is really coming in the past 2 to 3 years?
That's a good question. It's probably, I'd need to look back at the data set, but I would say that more of it has happened recently. So if you kind of look at that tail, it would definitely be more recent has the bulk of them. But it was interesting as I was going back, I was like, oh, I remember that one. I remember that one. And I think that the interesting thing with schools that closed a long time ago, there wasn't this like hubbub around it. So like they closed, but there was no one to like post on LinkedIn and then offer their comments and all that stuff. So it is definitely, I think, true that more schools have closed recently, but then also as schools close, there's been more hype around it.
May I also ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there like a correlation between endowment and graduation rates, or job placement rates, or like grad school rates that is like the same number between all of those schools, or very similar?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I would say like all of the above. I mean, I mean this with no offense to any school that has closed, but typically they're closing because of like they're lacking in proof points, right? They're lacking in the ability to show like send your kid here because they will have a good experience. They will achieve success, have great resources. So typically sort of underneath all of these, yes, are challenges on kind of all of the above. Declining enrollments, which is then it sort of becomes this sort of vicious cycle. Declining enrollment, declining retention, et cetera.
Is there like a specific number though that you're seeing? So it's like, okay, we're at, our graduation rate's now at 55% or 70%, and then you notice 5 years later, or maybe, what I mean? Like I guess I'm not looking for an exact number, but just like in general, is there a number where you're like, uh-oh?
Yeah. So I haven't analyzed it in that way. I could and sort of come up with something, but I would generally put it this way, which is sort of less of a singular statement, but more. There's not really. I don't think that there's any one number that all of a sudden puts you at risk. It's more sort of a confluence of numbers. Like as these things start to kind of all interact, that's where you really run into trouble. I will also say that it is rare for a school to close. Like schools are far more resilient than a normal, like I said, like I hate using the word, but like a normal industry. Like if we were a normal industry, factories close, product lines sunset, supply meets demand, and we move on. But colleges are way more resilient. And so there's not really like one number that does it. It's more when you start to have like a combination of factors, that's where you start to really run into problems.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great question. All right, let's take a look at what this kind of looks like over time. So I've broken this apart by sector. So what we're looking at is first-time, full-time traditional enrollment at public 4-year and private 4-year. I went back to 2014 so we could have kind of 10 years of data. The data set only goes through 2023, but it's enough to give us a pretty good sense of a trend. And the way to read this, I calculated each average entering class and then compared it back to 2014 to create an index. So the way to read this, for example, would be to say in 2018, on average, public four-year institutions' first-year class was about 7% larger than they were in 2014. And then with that, we can sort of see the contour. We had like some growth, and then you can see where we took a dent at COVID, and then we had some degree of recovery, the lion's share of which is sort of is skewed toward public institutions. But this has everyone on the same graph. So this has large schools and small schools and everyone in between. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this apart by one single dimension, which is how large is your first-year class. So I'm going to break this into large schools and small schools. And when I do that, you can see that we are living in two wildly different worlds. So on the public side, I've broken this into large flagship and then smaller regional. And then on the private side, I've just used 1,000 to say, all right, if your first year class has more than 1,000 students, I'm calling you a large private school. And if you have less than 1,000 first year enrolls, I'm calling you a small private institution. And what you can see is that these are just two wildly different worlds where if you are a large public institution or a large private institution, you didn't just recover from COVID, you actually surged to record levels and have sort of stayed there. Meanwhile, smaller institutions, in particular, smaller private institutions, took a dive at COVID, and a lot of them really have yet to see any degree of recovery. On the public side, there has been some degree of recovery, but again, not back to previous levels. So what I'm going to do now is break this apart into regions. And we're going to look at this in terms of regions. We're going to start with, I think I'm starting with private, and then we're going to look at public as well. So, oh, I was wrong. I started with public. So this is looking at public institutions. And again, the same dimension. So teal are regional non-flagship institutions. And then the darker color are large flagship institutions. And all of the regions are set to the same scale. So visually, you can sort of see the differences. And I mean, what's pretty wild to me, so the general trend holds where the large schools are dramatically outperforming the smaller institutions or the more regional institutions, but there's a lot of variance by region. So look at the Midwest. So huge disparity, and those smaller regional institutions are really struggling in the Midwest. Interesting in the Northeast. So you can see that the public regional institutions in the Northeast are kind of doing okay. Keep that in mind when we look at the privates in the Northeast. And then meanwhile, in the South, y'all are just crushing it. Where even the smaller institutions are still in a far better place than most areas, particularly the Northeast and the Midwest. Same view, just now switching to private institutions. And so you can see now in the Midwest, the variance is actually a little bit lower. Still the case, but like your Northwesterns and Notre Dames versus your smaller private colleges, still outperforming them, but just with less variance. And then in the South, you've got your larger private institutions just crushing it compared to where the smaller institutions are. But if I had to choose, I'd prefer to be a small private institution in the South than to be competing as a small private institution in the Northeast. So these are kind of the trends in which we that are describing the landscape that we operate in. All right, I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about kind of how the frame around recruitment strategy and how students view things. But before I move to that, any questions, comments, clarifications on what I've shared so far? All right. Catherine, how am I doing on time?
You're good.
5 minutes?
You got like 10 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so here's where I'm going to look to my friends on the high school side, because I am going to do my best to describe sort of the mindset of a high school student. And I'm not going to describe the mindset of a high school student, but I'm going to be speaking as though I know what high school students are thinking about, and I don't. So I want you to, please feel free to interject and offer your thoughts and comments from working with students. But kind of starting here from a college perspective, as you're trying to recruit and bring in students, consider that you have sort of, you have the full universe of students out there. And then there's two types. There are those that are familiar with you and those who are not. And among those that are familiar with you, you've got your friends. And these are the students that are coming whether you like it or not. Just make sure the doors are unlocked. They will be there. They've been planning to enroll at your college since 8th grade. Just make sure that you're there and they'll enroll. Your acquaintances, these are students who are familiar with you, but they're basically neutral in the disposition. And then finally, strangers. These are the students that don't even know of you. to have an opinion one way or another. And you have friends in your backyard, you have strangers in your backyard, you have friends far afield, and you have strangers far afield. And if we allow that all students fall into one of these three buckets, your friends are the best. They are the easiest to recruit, the most cost effective, they're the most efficient, they're the most fun. They write their essays about you, they're wonderful. The problem is there's not enough of them. And this is not a problem for any given institution. Every school has friends. No school has enough friends to achieve their enrollment objectives. And so the solution to achieving your enrollment objectives, it's not finding a hidden pocket of friends that you didn't know you had. The reality is that achieving any type of enrollment objectives is going to be on the backs of strangers. It's going to be by finding and engaging students that weren't thinking about you in the first place and bringing them into your embrace. The reason that's so hard is that if a student is a stranger to you, they're a friend to someone else. And so it's not just introducing all the wonderful things you have to offer. It is the fact that you have to be so persuasive that you are able to actually extract them from their current plan in order to bring them into your embrace. So the way that we go about doing this, as an institution, as a college university, you probably use like 30 different channels to tell your story to the market about all the reasons why students should enroll at your institution in droves. And it is, when you're thinking about like the decision that a student is making, it costs a lot. It matters a lot. If you do it right, you do it only one time. There's a whole bunch of different options. And so it is the most complex decision that any family will make. And to do that, we sort of have to leverage a bunch of different channels, which I've categorized here into 4. So you've got broadcast and brand, social and digital, direct, which is where your phone calls and emails are. Personal is, your staff. So broadcast and brand is great because you can reach a lot of people. The problem is that it's not particularly persuasive. Most people aren't like, I saw the billboard, therefore I'm going to enroll. On the other hand, your staff, nothing's more persuasive than your staff. The problem is that they can only meet with a given number of humans a day. And so each of these has their place where they're the most important. It's just a question of when and where and how. And in this case, essentially what you're doing is you're using your broadcast and brand to build awareness. Social and digital, you can influence. Direct communications, you can help to persuade. And then finally, it's your staff that delivers that final conviction toward enrollment. If we blend this on top of whether you think funnel or I use pyramid because funnel implies gravity's doing the work. Pyramid is sort of heavy lifting from one stage to another. But if we sort of layer these channels on top, if this orange line is the point at which a student makes their name available to you, below the orange line, students exist, right? And they may well have an interest in you, but you don't have a way to reach them directly. You can run an awareness campaign. You can try to find them on a social or digital platform, or you can meet them where they are in a high school or at a college fair. But otherwise, that's it. You can't sort of tell your story directly to them at scale until they make their name available to you. And this is the point at which they call you, email you, stop by campus, fill out a bubble sheet, take a test, whatever. Now their name is available to you and you can reach them directly and tell your story. As you move up the funnel, the impact of awareness and social and digital starts to sort of slip away and it gets replaced by the impact of direct and personal engagement. So that's sort of a frame that I think governs most enrollment offices. But the reason I introduce this is that I don't think that this really captures the full challenge of it. I think of this as more an enrollment management iceberg, where what we see as the funnel or pyramid or otherwise is really just the tip of the iceberg pointing out that we get to interact with on maybe the course of a cycle or two at best. But reality is most students aren't going to make their names available to colleges until their sophomore, junior, or senior year. And what that means is below that orange line, that's a whole bunch of time for influence from coaches and parents and teachers and counselors and friends and neighbors. And so sort of below this waterline, you are competing on awareness, perception, reputation. Above the waterline, you're competing on calls to action, persuasion. And so thinking about, the strategies that you're employing, it really matters what you're employing when and what you're trying to achieve. So if it's like, we've got all these admitted students, let's get them to yield. Let's go put up a billboard. No, that's not going to help. Probably more effective to call them or email them or text them. On the other hand, if you're trying to change your fundamental value proposition or brand positioning, let's go send a bunch of emails. No, that's not going to help. But maybe that is the time to run an awareness campaign, run some ads, building your perception, recognizing that that's something that might take 5 to even 10 years to really land and have an impact. I'm going to jump past this just out of time. I want to get to this quick point and then one other, and then I'll stop. So I think that we're all sort of, hearing all about AI in any number of different ways. I actually can't even imagine on the high school side how many different AI applications and things you're getting pitched. But I will share with you how we are thinking about AI as an organization that's helping colleges to tell their story. And sort of think about it this way, that in your, in this case, enrollment pyramid, you have two different populations. You have a population of students that are actively engaged. These are students that they email you back, they call you back, they text you back, they call you with questions, they email you with questions. This group is actively engaged. And they, as much as it might seem there's new students that are passively engaged. They're interested in you and they listen, but they're not responding. They're not calling you with questions. They're not responding back, but they're just passively receiving your messages. Both are important. You need both of them. Interestingly, actively engaged ultimately might end up making half your class, but you still need the other half. And so as far as a use case, a great use case and the way we're thinking about this is for the actively engaged population. That's a great place for like a chatbot or an agent. These are students that they've got lots of questions. They want them answered quickly, accurately, and at all hours. So here's where AI can be used to increase the engagement efficiency. On the other hand, passively engaged. These are students that they're not calling you back. So a chat bot agent's not going to do you any good. And in this case, what we're focusing on is how can we understand a student's digital behavior in order to deliver to them a better experience and communicate with them about the things that matter the most, and providing better differentiation. Last thing, promise, last slide, is we just asked students, what's most important to you? Like what's valuable to you when you think about your college enrollment decision? And what's fascinating is one might think, and I've shared this slide with faculty members, and they almost seem like crestfallen to find that academics is so low on the list. But the way that I would suggest interpreting this is not that a student's like, oh, academics aren't important. Rather, it's that they assume you're going to teach them stuff. Like that's table stakes. I assume you're going to teach me stuff. I assume your faculty are really smart and know what they're doing. But what else are you doing? What are you going to wrap around that to make sure that you're getting me to where I want to go? And we ask the same question of parents. What do you find valuable? What are you willing to pay for? And they tell us the same thing. Like, yes, look, I assume you're going to teach them stuff. I assume you guys know what you're doing. I assume your faculty care and are really smart. But what else are you going to do? What are the things that you're going to do that are going to help Johnny get from point A to point B and get them to where they want to go? That's what I'm willing to pay for, and that's what I see value in. All right, so that's my rundown. I could keep going, but I'm gonna stop there, pause for questions, and then I know you have other business to tend to, but I hope that this gives you some sense of some of the things that we're seeing in our view of the market. Questions or comments?
I have something I'll, I guess, comment and add. So I recently discovered this Robert Zemsky model. He talks about the different tiers of, I guess, college strengths and kind of predicts their future closure, especially in regards to like finances and changing the typical model from the 4-year college to the 3-year model. Is there anything you guys are planning or any other information you guys have on that?
So can I give you an honest answer?
Yeah.
No, and
Okay.
no, and no. And it's just, we've tried to stay out of the college closure observation business. It's just, it's not a productive exercise because you end up with these, like, if someone's going to make a statement, it's just, it wouldn't be right for us to make any statement or observations on school closures because all of a sudden, the moment you've been cast as this school is likely to close or this school is in a sector that's likely to close, you kind of create a self-fulfilling prophecy for that school, which I think we find tremendously unfair and inappropriate. Not to say that others it's fine. They can go off on it, but we're just not in a position where we can do that. So I don't have a really good, thoughtful comment on that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ian while we have him here? All right. Well, and I do have the slides, so I'll be sure that we share those out. I know Diana typically sends a follow-up, so we'll be sure to share the slides, and they'll have a few more touch points that Ian did not get to today. But Ian, we so appreciate your time and your expertise, and thank you again for sharing all of this wonderful information with us, and also in such a short amount of time, which we really appreciate you kind of giving us the nuts and the bolts. So again, thank you for being here and spending some part of your afternoon with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, and I will leave you all to do the good work that you do.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I think everyone here knows what SACAC is. But if you don't, I do have this one slide I just want to share. Again, I know all of you are pretty familiar with it, but I will let you just kind of see through that. And then we have several updates from members. And so I know some of you are on the call. I'm eager to share your updates. So if you are here from a committee, when I get to your slide, if you just want to hop on, I will stop talking and then I'm going to give it a brief pause because if you aren't here for your committee, I do have a few notes for people. So here are all of our committees. Again, if you're not familiar with our SACAC committees, these are the ones we have. And so admissions practices, I think that's Malika. So I'm going to let her share.
Is it morning or afternoon? It's afternoon for you guys. Still morning for me. Greetings from the great state of Mississippi. I hope everyone is well. I am Malika Lindsay, and I'm the current admissions practices chair for SACAC. I'm also going to be speaking to you on behalf of professional development because I'm one of the tri-chairs of professional development for SACAC right now. But just really briefly, admissions practices exists in every ACAC, and that's because ethical practices matter in our profession. We are, we have a national committee. We have really good insight into best practices in the GEPCA, is what we call the Guide to Ethical Practice in College Admissions, which you are encouraged to take a look at if you ever have time. There are all kinds of scenarios we give people and ways to learn about ethical practice from both sides of the desk, or all sides of the desk, I should say. And then if there are any concerns or questions about ethics and ethical practice in our region, please reach out to me. I am happy to share insight and also seek out further assistance from the national team so that we're able to give you good insight and guidance on those things that come up for you that are ethical questions in our region. So that's admissions practices. Thank you, Catherine.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Advancement.
That's me.
I thought so.
Yeah. Hey everybody. So I'm Julia Hodge. I'm our advancement chair, or one of them, because I now have a partner this year, which is very exciting for advancement. But basically that means we collect your money. So if any of you are thinking about maybe sponsoring the upcoming SACAC conference, which you'll hear more about, feel free to do that. We've got QR codes here for sponsor registration as well as exhibitor registration, and there's lots of different options. I will say for those of you specifically who are on the call today, if you look down at the bottom, there are kind of smaller options too. So institutional partners and friend of SACAC, so 500 and 1,000, which give you a little bit of kind of promotion and recognition, but it's not necessarily going to break the bank. So it could be an option for your organization or institution that you're a part of. And then also just keep in mind as we do kind of move around, so SACAC does move around and we will look for sponsors regardless of where we are. So if you end up, if we end up closer to South Carolina, or if we end up in kind of, states where you work with people, so maybe you have a regional or something like that, and you're trying to grow your area, just kind of consider that for the future. Also, if you're talking to any vendors or anybody and they say something like, I'd really like to break into the southern region a little bit more, send them my way because I can help with that. So thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, Julia. Corey.
Good morning, everyone. Well, actually, it's afternoon for you all, right? I'm on Central Time Zone, so not quite used to that just yet. But we are in full steam ahead mode with the annual conference for the spring. And so, as you can see here, this is the official logo for our conference. The session is themed usually by the president-elect. And so Miss Anita Waugh wanted to encapsulate the spirit of our anniversary with this theme. And so you see here, we are calling this conference Opening Doors, Changing Lives. And we really just want to celebrate everything that SACAC has accomplished over the last 60 years And I have been joking with many people in my circle that this is not only an anniversary conference, but is also the 60th year we have been having a conference as an association. And so we're getting two 60 anniversary birthdays, if you will. But my joke is that we may not have had the foundation of who SACAC was, what we were going to accomplish, but by gosh, we were going to party with a conference. So we're one thing is true, we are a social bunch. And so we're very excited about this. If you want to go to the next slide. So our conference, for those of you who maybe this is going to be your first time to attend, this is a very quick event. Essentially, our sessions and the kickoff will start on March 22nd and conclude on March 23rd. But we do have some pre-conference sessions and some college tours, as well as an outreach project scheduled for the 21st. So there are some people that will make plans to come in a little early if we have some board members on the call. So if we have some board members, you would be expected to be there on the 21st. And for any of you who are applying for board service for the first time, if you were to be granted that opportunity and invited to serve on the board, you would actually come in and stay a day later because we would have a wrap-up board meeting on the 24th. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're planning to throw your name in the hat there, that you might want to keep March 24th kind of blocked off for that particular meeting. But we are anticipating registration opening December, probably sometime around December 13th, 14th, 15th, somewhere along in there. It really just depends on how quickly our committee can come up with which sessions they want to choose. We had a whopping 136 total submissions. So we have our work cut out for us. And just to put that into perspective of how competitive it will be for selecting sessions, we have the capacity for about 60 to 70 sessions. So there will be some sessions that will be cut, unfortunately, but because SACAC is so great with its programming and outreach, there was a question this time for session proposals asking if you would be willing to opt in to having your proposal kind of shared with some of our other committees. And so we will definitely, if you opted into that, we will be contacting you in other forms of SACAC to see if we can still get your information. But also just know, if you get told a no this time, it's not a forever no, just like the college application process. Your information is still very valuable, and we would love for you to resubmit that in the future. Our conference will take place we will be hosted at the Sheraton, New Orleans. And so it is a beautiful hotel, and we will be using many of the floors within that hotel. So please make plans to book your room there, just like normal. Well, I say normal for those of you who may not have ever experienced a SACAC conference before. When you register for the conference in December, our hotel information is usually included in the confirmation email that you'll receive after registering for the conference. And so that's when you'll have the specific link to be able to book your hotel room. So I would ask, as your conference chair, that you wouldn't go in and try to book with the Sheraton on the front end, because we do have a special rate that will be for our attendees. And you may say, well, I bet the rate's not going to be as cheap as I can get with, say, government rate or some other type of rate that you may see posted. The catch is the posted rate does not include all of the additional fees and tourism fees that are included. And our special rate does include all of those things. And so it really would be an advantage for all of our attendees to plan on using the room block and the room rate, so that you can bypass any of those hidden fees, if you will, because there are some in a destination like New Orleans. But speaking of that, registration this year, if you were paying attention to our membership meeting at NACAC, We did have to go up on the registration this time because we are simply behind the times for what it costs to put on our conference. And so the early bird registration rate will be $350, and that will be extended until January the 31st. And then starting on February 1st, the rate will go up $50. So it'll be $400 at that point for anybody starting on February 1st. The room rates this time will be $239 per room. And so still, I don't know how many of y'all are traveling to New Orleans lately, but that's actually a really good rate for that area. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If you are one that maybe you're considering hosting a reception of your own, our schedule at a glance is posted on the website. And so I would encourage you to please look at that. We don't want anybody scheduling receptions that's going to conflict with something that's on our schedule. So please just try to work around that. I would love it even more if you would contact me if you are interested in hosting a reception, because we are working and partnering with New Orleans and Company, and they are helping us find local restaurants that they already have partnerships with. And so you may be able to secure a really good rate if you were to go through me, and I can connect you with them. Speaking of special rates, again, we had to go up on the registration, but I'm happy to still give you some discounts where possible. So if any of you are Southwest connoisseurs, actually be watching in your confirmation email after you register, because I have officially signed an agreement with Southwest Airlines, and there will be a priority rate that you're able to get using a special code if you're going to fly into New Orleans with Southwest. So those details will be in the confirmation email. I'm not going to speak more on that just yet because there's actual language I have to be conscious of, and I'm going to make sure that Southwest tells me what that language is before I say it. So not trying to be held liable for anything on my first year ago as conference chair. So that will be something that we advertise in the confirmation email. Our social is going to take place at the Sazerac House. It's just basically right next door to the Sheraton, so we won't have to worry about shuttles and busing off location, anything like that. It's super convenient. It's a full buyout, so we will have the whole Sazerac. And so if you haven't already, I would encourage you to Google that facility. It is such a beautiful space. It's really cool, and we're going to have some really neat surprise elements as part of that experience that I'm not going to share just yet. But I can assure you this 60th conference will be a party, and we are super, super excited for you all to join us in New Orleans.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. All right. Is anyone here from the Finance Committee? All right. Well, briefly, I'll just share a little bit about the Counselor Participation Fund. You can see on here that there is an application open. It closes on the 2nd, and then there will be a second round. So if you're interested in attending, the annual conference, summer seminar, Sweet Tea Tour, all that stuff, I know there's more information on the SACAC website as well. And then also the Extending the Dream Grant information is here with the QR codes if anybody needs that. Thank you, Darren. All right, I'm going to keep rolling through. I know we're running short on time. Anyone from Government Relations? Okay. I don't know when our South Carolina Legislative Day is yet. Does anyone else by chance know that? Okay. Thank you, Joya. I see the head nod. All right. Well, they will be planning that for us and letting us know the day. And then I don't think anybody was here for this, which is why I have the information, but governance and nominating, as Corey mentioned, getting involved and, applying for the board if you're interested in doing that, or for president-elect or treasurer-elect. Also our nominations for annual awards. So all of those will be upcoming, but they do have a specific webinar about that information to learn a little bit more about the application process and just what all that entails. And so if you can't make it, they will also record it and send it out to, I believe, registrants, but also hopefully a lot of people. So feel free to look into that if you're not available that day and you have an interest. I will make sure that we get all the links for the board nomination form, application form, all that stuff. I know y'all probably can't click on them right now. So I will send out the slides for this as well as Ian's slides. And so you can click in them there. But also, again, if you have any questions, I know Dana is happy to help if you can't find it on the website. And there also, again, as the award nominations, please nominate your colleagues, so that we can celebrate our colleagues at annual conference. I'm going to pause for anybody if anybody has an additional comment. All right, we're rolling through. All right, inclusion and access.
Hi, everyone. My name is Celeste Roselli. I'm one of the co-chairs for Inclusion, Access, and Success. So I just wanted to quickly plug a couple of the programming that we have going on. We have our very beloved and very successful virtual book club that's been highlighted on social media, and you're also getting emails of it. Thank you to all the people that do run that virtual book club for us. The topics that they've chosen are phenomenal. So if you aren't following along, I definitely encourage you to take part of it. We also have several other programming that we do, which is the follow-up slides that we have in today's presentation. Sorry, here you go. We are always looking for people to step up and volunteer for our college admissions workshops. We actually have one that's scheduled to happen in South Carolina next January 10th. So we're very excited. And I definitely want to thank Ashley Gainey and Kimberly Denise Brown, who are our heads of putting that together there. To piggyback a little bit on Corey's comment, if you are a person whose presentation ultimately isn't chosen for the annual conference, we actually do host a virtual access forum. This year, it will be on May 20th. It'll be the second year. We're looking for folks that want to run the virtual forum going forward. I was one of the people that ran it last year, and I can definitely talk to you about what that experience was like. And it was a wonderful half-day event, and we had about 60 members at one point logged in to this whole day virtual session, and we had some really wonderful topics. I want to give a quick shout out to Juan Acosta, who presented on not feeling like you're an imposter in your profession, and it was a really good presentation to hear towards at the end of the year when so many decisions are being made and you're reflecting on everything that's happened. And it's one that's definitely stuck with me throughout the entire year so far, trying to calm myself post November 1st and all the scored NACAC portal hiccups that can happen, and feeling like you've got this. So yeah, those are some of the updates that we have for Inclusion, Access, and Success. I also want to share hi from my amazing co-chair, Elena Garcia, who is with a lot of our SACAC board members at the College Board Forum. So if any of you have colleagues that are there, they're planning a little SACAC meetup and getting together. So that's for all. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to click forward. So yeah, so this is more information about the college admission workshop. It'll be in Greenville, and Kimberly Brown and Ashley Gainey can answer any questions anybody has. All right, I know Member Relations is not here, but these are the lovely people from Member Relations. So they did send me a photo, Shannon, John Palmer, and Alex. They wanted to share a little bit more about special interest groups that we do have in SACAC. If you're not familiar, I know that they're continuing to grow. I feel like there's new ones every single year. So keep an eye out for those if you have an interest in joining one of our special interest groups or are interested in forming your own. I think that that's an option as well. And then they do have upcoming meetings for the special interest groups. And so, again, more information about that is on the website if you have an interest in joining one or, joining one of the meetings and learning a little bit more about those.
Catherine,
And then, please.
Chime in for just a second on that one?
Yeah.
So, speaking of special interest groups, when I rolled on as conference chair, one of the immediate requests that came to me was about how we can incorporate more SIG opportunities at the annual conference. And so I do want to use this as a time just to highlight that we were able to make that accommodation a little bit. So if you look at if you've been to the conference before, generally there's one time where SIGs are able to get together later in the evening on that Sunday afternoon. But for the first time, we're actually going to have 2 different times available on Sunday. So the idea is the first opportunity will be right after the newcomer session that morning, in the hopes that we can tease what a SIG is to SACAC to the newcomers, and then they can be excited and go and experience their first SIG meeting immediately after that, before the conference kickoff. And then later that evening, we'll have the regular time. So if you are a part of a SIG or want to join those, just know if you get to come to the conference, you'll get to experience that community and group twice.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. I love that idea too. Okay. Well, if you're not a member, you should join. I think everyone on this call is a member though, but just in case, if you're not, here you go. So just a little bit more about our memberships. If again, you have any questions, I know our membership team will be happy to answer them. I didn't think anybody was here from presidential, but in case you didn't know, here's our lovely presidential team. They sent me this slide. It's very beautiful. I love everyone's pretty pictures. So yay, presidential team. Professional development.
Hello again. We are excited to do all of our programs. We do not, however, run the mentorship program. We're not quite sure how that wound up on the PD slides, but we do think mentorship is important. So please do look into that using the QR code that's on the screen. SACAC Leads is a wonderful opportunity for people who are at midpoint perhaps in their professional journey, who are looking for ways to move forward, ways to get engaged with SACAC. It's sort of a incubator for our next great leaders. And so we encourage folks to participate in SACAC Leads. It's a nominal fee and it's definitely worth it. You'll get mentored by some pretty amazing faculty and meet up with some really interesting people as well. Next slide, please. And those of you who are, most of you on this call will not need summer seminar or dry run, but summer seminar is our opportunity for new college counselors to get ready for being college counselors full time over the summer. It's a 4-day workshop. And dry run is a similar opportunity, but for new admissions professionals, and is considered one of our cornerstone programs. It's a lot of fun for newer professionals. It gives them a really good sense of what professionalism really is and how to approach their first year or years working in college admissions. So both of those programs are exceptionally well run, led by some amazing faculty, and definitely worth your time and interest. So please look into those if either one is of interest to you or of interest to new staff that you have on your teams this coming summer. Oh, and Sweet Tea Tour is an annual event. Sweet Tea travels all over the South, but we pick a certain region every year. I don't think we're announcing where we're going this coming year yet, but it's a 5-day tour and it always sells out pretty quickly. So we encourage you, if you're interested in Sweet Tea, to keep an eye out for the announcement about that. That usually comes in February or March. We let everyone know about the location. So Sweet Tea is great for anyone who is interested in getting a feel for new places, but particularly independent counselors and college counselors get the most out of that event.
Thank you, Malika.
Mm-hmm.
And then our state updates, we really didn't have too many because again, I don't think we have much more info about the our lobbying day on the Hill in Columbia just yet. And then does anybody have any information about the drive-in? It's okay if not, we will share it as soon as we have it. But Omodi, do you? Sorry.
Well, I was not gonna try and guess and check, but we'll definitely have the date coming out soon.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I know we're a little over time. I'm so sorry, but here were our breakout questions if we got to them. And again, more information about membership, which I think all of you know. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry that was like a lot of information thrown at you all at one time, but I'm going to turn it over to Monique to round us out.
Awesome. So I just want to say thank you so much, first of all, Catherine. If you guys could just give some virtual claps or put something in the chat with organizing, but also want to just say thank you so much to all of the presenters, both your presenter from your state, but also to the board members with such great, invaluable information. I am Monique Tubbs from State and Area Initiatives. I'm one of three. Mr. Darren Morgan was here as well. He had to jump off, and also Kristen Bird. But we get to work closely with Catherine and all of our state chairs and our drive-in workshop coordinators. So thank you for joining today. We truly appreciate it. I just want to circle back, if you don't mind, and reiterate the importance of, if you are not a member, if you are watching the recording, or if you are here live, then we want you to join. There's so much information and resources that's shared through SACAC. I want to reiterate that Council Participation Fund and not missing the deadline, because I was able to attend 2 conferences only because of that. And then there's also information on the website I'll put in the chat for our extending our ETD timeline for you guys to have more information about that as a resource to support the work you're doing. So I know it was a lot, but copy and paste some of these links to review later, watch the recording, reach out to Catherine, reach out to us. We are here to help. And I also want to encourage you to just get involved, become a member, but also get actively engaged in SACAC. There is so much to do. We are just waiting on you. So with that, you guys have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank y'all. See ya.
Thank you.